You are listening to the Mom to Mom podcast, hosted by Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. This podcast is meant to empower women and bring the community together through storytelling and education. During these episodes, you will hear stories of triumph, heartache, and hope. You will hear time-tested tips and tricks shared by mamas and women. You will hear a variety of birth stories that will resonate with all birthing families, advice from professionals who have dedicated their teachings to pregnancy, birth, and moms. Here, you will find encouragement, support, and community, because we are your community, and we are so happy to have you. Now, on to today's episode. Hello, How to Mom community. I am so excited for today's episode. We have How to Mom clients, Kristi and Zach, and sweet, sweet baby girl. I cannot wait for them to share their birth story with you guys. It is an epic story, not only for them as parents, but definitely one for the books for me as a doula. It was, after 7.5 years, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I'm so excited for them to be able to share what all of that is about. This is their second child, so this was not their first rodeo with childbirth. And I think what was so incredible with working with Zach and Kristi was we were able to not only talk about their first birth and different experiences that they learned from, but also we were really able to talk about trusting the process, kind of being familiar with what childbirth could feel like. And they both did such a great job at being able to talk through their experiences and then kind of create and write a new story for their new babe. And so thank you so much, you guys, for being on today and for being willing to share your birth stories with the community. I really have such a strong feeling that sharing all types of birth stories on this podcast is really going to inspire a lot of families to not only make childbirth normalized, but also just to show the variety of what birth stories can look like, and that each and every journey is super unique. So welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for being here. So I'm going to let you guys take the lead with introducing yourselves and kind of just chatting through not only briefly kind of your first birth story and what that felt like as first-time parents, but then the preparation that we did for your second birth and how it was different and unique. And how Kristi, too, I think going through so much work and touching in with positive affirmations because you had given birth not long ago. And so kind of being able to put yourself right back and remember what childbirth felt like, I know was a big thing for you. And you did a lot of work to kind of get your mindset right for this birth. So I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. I'm Kristi, and we have Parker here with us. So if you hear some grunts and coos, and that's what that is.
We love it.
And I'm Zach, Kristi's husband, obviously, and baby daddy. Yeah.
So we married for about 2.5 years, and we have an almost 18-month-old Poppy. So we are very busy with a new baby and a toddler.
Full-on toddler.
Very busy.
So with Poppy, we decided that we were going to try to do an unmedicated birth. That was something. Oh yeah, can we cut that? I forgot to introduce what we did for our jobs and stuff.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
You go first.
Okay. Should I start again with the introducing Poppy?
No, you can. Yeah, I think that we'll end it at the toddler, very busy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a teacher.
And I'm a chiropractor.
So with him being a chiropractor, kind of opened up my eyes to more of the natural side of things. And when we got pregnant with Poppy, he started kind of educating me, and we started talking through how we wanted our birth to be. And we decided that we would do an unmedicated, or try to do an unmedicated birth with Poppy. So I did a lot of listening to, I listened to the IMA's Guide to Childbirth. I listened to a lot of different podcasts and birth stories.
You did a lot of investigation, and just with my profession, right, my education, we just have a different appreciation for the human body and what it's capable of. So, you know, through our our relationship, you know, slowly, like teaching her what I know helped us both appreciate the body's ability to, you know, heal from my profession, but also to birth a child. You know, it's something that we've been doing as humans for ever, right? So just that kind of started the route, and Kristi did a lot of her own work, just understanding that and really giving her body respect so that she could go through that process. So with our first pregnancy, you know, we knew a lot. We talked a lot about it, but I knew there was a component of me just being a health provider that I didn't really want to be part of her pregnancy and her birth as a health provider. I wanted to be there as a husband,
Yes.
and a future dad. So that's where we went down the route of finding a doula. Sarah, who was our first doula, who I'll get into, she had referred us to you when she moved out of state. But she was great. She was a really good, you know, the right doula for us at that time. She was a CrossFit coach, which was helpful for Kristi because she's very competitive, very athletic. So her mindset, you know, that pregnancy was different. And I guess you can touch on that with Poppy.
Yeah, so I was doing CrossFit all through my pregnancy, up until like the week I had her. So one of the things that we had talked about with Sarah was like what motivates you and what like kind of mindset, what helps with mindset. And we had said like, when I was working out the last couple weeks, I would think like, or when we were doing those first, I can't remember now.
One more set.
One more set.
One more
Yeah.
set.
Yeah.
One more minute.
Where like you're only doing it for this short time and then you get to rest. And so I was kind of trying to like during the CrossFit workouts get my mindset to thinking in that way. And then during labor, I was hoping that I would be able to kind of think of it as like a CrossFit workout. So I don't know if it really actually worked that well once we were in it, but that was the kind of how we prepped for it. So.
Yeah. So preparation for that she did a really good job. You know, number 2 was a lot more prep work on her part. I'll get into that too. But number 1, you know, pregnancy, if you want to get into that birth story.
Yeah. So, my contraction started with Poppy in the middle of the night, and I got up and took a shower and before I woke him up, and then he got up maybe an hour or 2 after me, and then by like 6 or 7 in the morning, I was like feeling like I had like a lot of pressure like in my butt, and I felt like I had to push. And you know, I hadn't gone through it before, so I didn't know what these different feelings were. And so we called Sarah and had her come over, and we were like, I think we need to go to the hospital. And by the time she got there, we ended up laboring at home for a lot longer, but I was laboring on the toilet for most of Poppy's labor. And now after going through it, then I found out I was having back labor, which I didn't know was a thing. And because she is then sunny side up, her head was putting more pressure on my butt, which was making that pushing sensation. So we labored at home until about noon, and it was a lot more intense than I was expecting. I mean, I knew it was going to be intense, but I thought I'd be able to deal with it better. And I know like he has a different perspective, but it was like, okay, like I feel like this is a lot. Do you have anything to add to that before we get to the hospital?
It was a lot. You know, it was one of those things as we were thinking of our game, you know, our birth plan. It's like, yeah, of course, like we want to do as much as we can to go unmedicated, but we always know that's like there if needed, right?
Yep.
So yeah, we went to the hospital.
So we get to the hospital, and I'm thinking, like, okay, for sure I'm like a 7, but like I'll be prepared because I've heard a lot of stories about how you think you're further than you are. And so I'm like, so I'll, in my mind, I'll think like a 4. So we get into triage, and the nurse checks me, and she's like, okay. Oh, well, pause there for a second. At my appointment 2 weeks prior, I was already at a 2. So now going forward, we're in triage, and she's like, okay, so you're at 2. And I looked at Zach with a death look of like,
Oh yeah,
This can't be right.
She's wrong. Like, you better
This
check
cannot be
me.
right.
You're wrong. So then when we were in triage, my water broke, which was kind of a cool experience for Zach because he was doing counter pressure on my back when my water broke, and so he could feel it. And so at the chiropractor, that was something that was like super cool for him.
Sorry, we're getting
Parker's there.
Yeah.
No, I love it. And too, for your water to break, with that defeating news, and then for your water to break, though, definitely helps kind of feel like we're moving forward at least.
Yeah.
Right. And my contractions, I felt like were like a minute apart at this point. And the nurse was like, okay, so let me know when you're not having a contraction and we can do your COVID test. So then I'd be like, I'm going to have a contraction and I have one. And then I get done. I'd be like, I'm going to have a contraction and I have one. So nonstop. Because she does the COVID test, then the same thing with the IV, and then finally, and we just couldn't get it in because they were coming so fast, and I couldn't sit because of the back pressure, and so it's just very uncomfortable. And Sarah finally said, if she's not getting an epidural, then she needs an IV. And so the nurse was like, no, I guess not. So they got us into our room. We had a tub we were at Maple Grove Hospital, and we had a tub there. So we labored in the tub for a little while, and then they couldn't get the monitor to stay on my belly in the tub, so they wanted us to come out. And so before we had my midwife checked us before we had gotten in the tub, and I was feeling like I had to push, and she said, don't push yet because your cervix isn't quite out of the way, and so you don't want to rip it. And so she was really having me do the horse lips and breathe out, and that helped a lot with not pushing. So we get out of the tub, she checked me again, and she said we're ready. So we started pushing. And
how long do you think that was, time frame wise, from when you were in triage to when you were ready to push?
Yeah, it was about 2.5, 3 hours.
Pretty incredible, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, once we got into our room, it went super fast. Like that 3 hours did not feel like 3 hours. It felt very fast.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. And I just kind of was very into myself. I was leaning over the tub. I was moaning like I never knew I had those sounds in me before. It just was like my eyes were closed through pretty much the whole thing. Zach was a really good support, and just
we had a really good team of midwives and the midwives, nurses, and our doula. Obviously, it was just a really good environment.
Yeah, just feeling safe to kind of get into your zone and just labor without any interruptions. Like that does wonders, and I think a lot of times that gets overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like I went in like to go into the tub, like I took off my bra, I took off everything. Like I just felt so comfortable. Like I don't care like who sees me, like what's happening. I just need to feel comfortable here. Also, because we were the only people like giving birth for our midwife, then we had our own midwife the whole time and our midwife nurse the whole time. Back. And so no one was in and out. Everyone that was there, and and people would just kind of sat back and slept when they needed to. We didn't have any music playing. We didn't. I don't think the lights were even dimmed. But
no, it was just all Kristi. We were just all there to support.
Yeah, and we talk about that a lot with clients too. Like a lot of times, there's nothing to be done, but just to kind of hold space. You knew that your people were around you. You knew you were safe, and you were able to just be 100% present with your body and with your baby. And I want people to know that that can take place in a hospital setting.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, I felt like my doula was helping more with the birth than the midwife. Like I felt like the midwife and the nurse didn't do anything and except the check and like at the end when we were pushing, but I do feel like I wouldn't have even noticed that they were there for a while.
Yeah.
Right.
And probably that's the whole reason why we got a doula, knowing that, the midwives and, OBs, they have their job is essentially to get baby out safe, right?
Exactly.
So I think that's obviously why we had you as our doula.
Yeah, and they're always
Around-
wearing that medical hat, right? They always
Always,
wearing
yeah.
that medical hat.
And it's
That's their number one.
their job. That's what they're supposed to do too. So,
Incredible.
then,
So we got on the bed. We tried laboring on my hands and knees, and that didn't feel right. So I laid on my side. We pushed for probably 30 minutes, and she was here.
All right, you guys, we are going to take a brief break from today's episode so I can tell you all about one of my favorite companies, Kindred Bravely. They design and sell the best pregnancy and postpartum bras, underwear, sleep, and loungewear. They also have one of my favorite products. It's called the Fourth Trimester Panty. This product is just wonderful because it supplies some security for your postpartum belly, and I really needed that when I was postpartum. But it also is designed and comes with some cooling pads. You can either put them in the freezer to add a little cool touch, or you can put them in the microwave to add some heat, whether you're recovering from a surgical or a vaginal birth. I literally wish I would have had this in my postpartum days, especially when I was recovering from both a vaginal and a surgical birth with my twins. One of my favorite products from them. But please feel free to go to their website, check out all of the amazing products that they offer. You can get to their site by following howtomom.com/links. Follow the Kindred Bravely link. And then at the end of shopping, you can add the promo code HowToMom15 to receive 15% off today. All right, now back to today's episode. Wow.
And then my placenta didn't deliver with her within their 30-minute window. So then they were working on me and trying to get it to come out. And then they're like, okay, we need to get the OB in here. So the OB comes in and she tries and she said, okay, I'm going to try one more thing. And if it doesn't work, we're going to have to go to the OR. And as she's saying the OR, my placenta just flies out. Like my body was like, nope. So I was thinking like, we just did an unmedicated birth and I'm going to have to go to the OR for a placenta. This is not happening.
Heck no. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And right, I'm sure though, kind of through that process, like that's a different experience too when you're unmedicated and they're kind of maybe pulling a little bit on your placenta, trying to help it detach. And I want to touch too, just for a moment on the labor with Poppy, because back labor is something, I mean, labor in itself is really hard to describe and explain, right, to somebody that has never felt it before. But as a mom who has also experienced back labor versus labor in the front of a baby who is in an optimal position and not posterior, Kristi, it's like holy buckets. It is a total different ballgame. And that doesn't mean that labor in general is any easy task, but there's something different about back labor. It creates so much pressure. How I described it is it felt like my bones in my back were like breaking apart. I mean, it's just a very, very different experience. And that is why having your team and doing as much as we can for movement and gravity and positioning can really help take that pressure off the back and help your baby get into a much better position, which sounds like once Poppy did, I mean, it went really, really quickly.
Yep.
Yeah. And we did, Sarah had us do some different like positions during contractions if I could, because it was obviously intense. To try to get her to turn. So when she came out, her nose was like facing my leg and her hand was up by her head. So
that's right, her hand too.
Yes.
So that added to it. But yeah, it was just, it just feels like you're almost like you're in the pushing stage for the whole labor, which is just a lot more intense, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But now we have Poppy.
Yeah.
She's a great baby.
She was super easy. She was super great. And so then as we're preparing for the next one, I was like, oh no, like I have to go through labor again. And I was like not ready. And I was, because
we found out that we were pregnant with Parker when Poppy was 7 months.
Right.
About almost like a year ago.
Everything was still very, very raw.
Yeah, and I haven't really dealt with the birth trauma. I did a new mom group, and we went through one of the first classes, and everyone told their birth story. And what I kind of realized was all birth is amazing, but also traumatic almost in a way. And even though nothing went wrong and everyone was healthy and I was healthy, and listening to the other girls' birth stories, mine was the easiest one, but it was still a trauma in a sense, it's just, it's a lot that your body goes through and your mind goes through. And so I haven't really dealt with that. And I was like, oh no, not this again. And honestly, I didn't really even then think about the birth or the labor until maybe a month and a half before Parker came. And then I was like, okay, I really need to start dealing with this, or I'm not going to be able to go unmedicated. And because Poppy was so easy and so good, I was like, what if I have to get an epidural and then this next baby is so hard, and then I'm going to blame it on an epidural, which, you would have no idea if it was the medication or just the demeanor of the baby. So, but I always was like, okay, I want to have her unmedicated. So just kind
of knowing many different whys behind that. But I want to explain to our listeners too, that there's a lot of whys that the two of you had as parents, of correlation sometimes with interventions leading towards maybe some issues with breastfeeding or sleep or body mechanics for our babies. And so, there's no right or wrong way to birth a baby. But I think for you guys, and what was so great and where you stayed so true to who you are as individuals and as parents, and what I always encourage clients is stay true to who you are and your whys and what kind of drives you, and just knowing who you guys are as people. That was a big why for you. And you're absolutely right. We don't always know, the correlations, but just with you having that experience of an unmedicated birth and then a pretty smooth postpartum time with Poppy, you desired that again as well, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then to prepare, I started listening to birth stories, and it was really nice when it was the second or third child that I was listening to the birth story of, because what I found was a connection with a lot of more people had back labor with their first baby. Not every labor one did, but I had no idea about back labor going into labor. And so having known that, maybe my mindset could have been a little bit different. But then that kind of helped at least get me to think okay, this birth is not necessarily going to go the same way. That a lot of these people had back labor in the first one and the second one. And so I kind of clung on to that. This is going to be, my body knows what to do. This is going to be an easier labor. It's not going to be back labor because the first one was, and I did it already.
Right. Different journey, different baby.
Yeah. And she did a lot of work to get through that. There was a lot of, like you said, trauma behind it, physical, emotional, mental, that she really worked through really well. And it took all of 9 months to get ready, but she was ready. As soon as it came, you were there. She was very mentally strong to get through that.
Very.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's such important work that so many people can learn from, because just in our society and life, right? We kind of get taught to sweep things under the rug or just not deal. And then all of a sudden we're in the moment and all of that comes flooding back. And now we're not only having to deal with the journey that we're in, but then all those past traumas are now included in that. And so that work is so important to not only heal, but then also to be able to be fully present and trusting your body and trusting your baby and knowing like this is a different journey, a new experience. We've healed from past traumas so that we can be fully present. I think that's, and it's hard work. It's not easy work, and it's uncomfortable. But it's so important. So yeah, I was so proud of you to go through all of that work.
The trust is definitely a big thing, just like we go back to trusting your body, that it knows what it's doing. And just kind of follow it, let it guide you. And that's where, we get into like once labor started, you were a huge help to like walk us through, because Kristi will discuss it, but it was a lot longer labor.
Well, yeah. So my contractions started again in the middle of the night, but they were like
also Friday.
Apart. It was same day of the week, Friday.
her due date too.
My due date, and I kept the week that she was born. It was like 3 weeks before. I'm like, you know what? I think she's going to come right on her due date, because every measurement with Poppy, they were like, oh, you're measuring 4 days early, and then she was 4 days early, and then every appointment with Parker, they were like, oh, you're measuring right on, like my whole pregnancy. So like the week before, I'm like, I bet we have her on our due date.
Right.
She came. So
crazy.
Contractions were in the middle of the night again, but they were further apart this time, so I could sleep between them. Whereas with Poppy, once they started, I had to get up. So then in the morning, it was like 5 or 6, we got out of bed, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go into school and I'll just get my stuff prepped for the sub and get a few things. And I knew that that it takes a while to get there. And so I was like, this will occupy my time and it will kind of keep me busy and keep my mind off things. I sent Zach to work, and then I was like, I better not go in, like, just in case like they get intense or whatever. So I stayed home, and I had Poppy with me, and I had about 2 contractions, and she was stepping on my stomach, and I was like, this is not going to work. So I called my mom, who was going to be the one to come over. So she came over and hung out with Poppy then for the rest of the day. And then I texted Zach, and he ended up only adjusting 1 patient and then coming home. So we got to go in and get things kind of squared away before we left. So then you got to our house at probably 11, and contractions were super inconsistent. Some would be a minute apart, and they'd be 12 minutes apart, 5 minutes apart, and they were all in the front, nothing in the back, nothing on, like my butt didn't feel it at all. And then it was just kind of...
Well, during that time too, even before you came, the different pregnancies, the different labors. So we, even having the trust that we have, we're human, so we still have some doubt. So we, should we go in? Hopefully my mother-in-law doesn't hear us. But, as soon as she had contractions, she was like, you have to go to the hospital. And like, we're good.
Yeah.
So when you got there, I think that was a big help for Kristi to understand, like, hey, this is normal. Like, you're super inconsistent. They're not very intense. Like, let's just wait it out, So that gave us a lot of confidence. Yeah. And from that point, we stayed at our house, another 3 or 4 hours?
5 hours. So
right.
Then,
well, and I think, so sorry to interrupt. I think too, with the work that we had done and kind of the conversations that we had about Poppy's birth, is right going in and getting checked and okay, we're at a 2, and just really wanting to be in the comfort of your home and laboring at home, for as long as you could. And so that for sure played a role, I think, in when the 3 of us were able to kind of touch base and say, okay, here's where we're at, kind of, here's what I'm thinking. And I thought that was super beautiful because you were able to still be around Poppy, which she, of course, smiles are nonstop when you're around her, which is helpful, right?
Right. Yeah. And I was gonna say, oh yeah, you said when we were like laboring at home. That was like laboring at home was so much better than laboring at the hospital with Poppy. As soon as we got to the hospital, it's just uncomfortable. You can't go down on the ground as comfortably as you can in your house, and you can't like the couch height for Poppy was a perfect height for me to lean over on, and then there was nothing that height at the hospital, and so laboring at home was so much more enjoyable than being in the hospital. So yeah, we did want to stay home as long as we could. So we did a lot of different positioning with you, and you were really good about helping us trying to get her to move down. And it was probably about 3 o'clock, and
You took a nap.
and I was starting to get frustrated because with Poppy, like even though timelines were a little bit different, like we left for the hospital at noon, and then we had her at 3:21, and so it was then like getting close to 3, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, we're never gonna have this baby. It's not progressing. Like I'm gonna be in labor for the next 48 hours. I don't know. Like this is never gonna end. And so then like you reassured us that with the second baby, they usually the like early labor is when you want to fuel and rest. So we were trying to eat. We were trying, and so you were like, why don't you guys go and see if you can lay down and have some time together? So we went and laid in the guest room, and that's when contractions were like probably 12 minutes apart. And so we would have a contraction, and Zach would do some counter pressure, and then we would rest, and then so about every 12 minutes. So we did that for about an hour, which was really nice. Before that, we were laboring in the family room. We went outside for a while on the patio. Poppy's playing in her little coupe car in the backyard. She was just kind of in it in there. And then, so we got up from our nap, and my low back was just getting so tight. Like it wasn't the back labor like I had with Poppy, but it was just very tight, and that was like where I was hurting the most. And so Zach has a table downstairs for adjusting, and he was like, let's go downstairs and adjust you and just see like how it feels. So this was about 4:15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we go downstairs, and he adjusts me, and my body moved like so good. You probably want to say a little bit more to that.
Yeah, it was a great adjustment.
It was like, okay.
And I've adjusted her, thousands of times, and I know her spine and her pelvis, pretty good, obviously. So, adjusted her. Things moved great, and then she got off the table, and
then within 2 minutes, they were a minute apart and really intense. So we walk upstairs, and we were kind of like, okay, should we go in now? I'm like, I think we should go in. Well, we didn't have the car packed. Zach wasn't even finished totally packing his stuff yet. And so we would have a contraction on like our kitchen table. I would lean over. Stephanie and Zach would help with the counter pressure, and then we would move one thing to the car. Yeah. And then we'd have another contraction. We'd move the second thing to the car, and it was intense, quick. And so my mom at this point is like, you guys should have been out of the hospital 5 hours ago.
Like, not now.
But yes, the intensity definitely changed gears very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about balance in the pelvis, right? I mean, you teach it like, it's the same as from our point of view as chiropractors, better balance, like the more welcoming that entrance into the world for baby is. And that just sped things up.
Created space for her.
Yep.
Yeah. So we lay all the seats in the Jeep down in the back. So, and we arranged pillows and everything. And so I had my little spot laying on my side in the back of the Jeep on the way to the hospital. And then Stephanie drove behind us. And so we get up, we're probably 5 miles.
It's like 20 minutes.
Yeah. So 10 minutes from home. 10 minutes from the hospital, about halfway, my water breaks. And my cousin works at the hospital. And so I texted her like on our way. And then like 5 minutes later, I'm like, my water broke. I feel like I have to push. Like it was like, I couldn't stop it. I was trying so hard because with my first labor, my midwife had said, like, your cervix isn't out of the way, so you don't want to rip it yet. And so I was thinking, like, okay, this is when you feel like you have to push and you shouldn't. And so I was trying so hard not to push, and I was doing like the fish lip or the horse lip. I can never do it when I'm not in the moment. But then I was like, yeah. So I'd be like, and then I'd have to push. So I'm like trying to go between like not pushing. So I was doing the horse lips, and then that would settle it. And then, and so Zach is reaching back, and he's like, "They're doing great. We're almost there. We're almost there."
Well, I'm texting with Stephanie too.
Yeah.
I'm like, water broke, driving and texting. Don't tell anybody, but we're texting each other because you're right behind us, and the whole way I'm just looking for, okay, where can I stop if we need to? And there was no, people always ask me like, well, weren't you freaking out? And it's like, no, there was really no fear associated with it. With you behind us, with my education, it's just like, she has it on the side of the road, then she has it on the side of the road. Like,
well, and I was just gonna say, I just remember it was so calm. Like there just really didn't feel any chaos. Like I remember I said to Zach, I said, okay, and I want to also let everybody know that it was a little bit of rush hour time because it was right around that 5 o'clock.
5, yep.
And it also
that was the first snow.
Was it?
It was the first snow that we got in October.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, it was the weirdest weather day, you guys, because it was like sunny and then it was like sleet rain, then snow, then sunny again. And so I just remember that whole ride going, this is just a day to remember. And I said to Zach, okay, it's going to get a little bit more intense now that her water has broken. I said, does she feel pushy? And he said, yep. And so I called actually the hospital and said, FYI, like we're going to come and baby's probably going to be born very soon after.
And they were ready.
Yep.
They were waiting in the room.
So, yeah. So we hit some rush hour traffic. We got stuck at a red light.
Yeah.
And we pull in the hospital. We pull in and we open up the back of the Jeep and I climb out and I have a contraction over the edge of the Jeep. And in the meantime, Stephanie runs in and comes out with a wheelchair. And I was like, you're like, let's go in. I'm like, no, I'm having this baby now. And you're like, just sit down and we'll go in really quick. And I'm like, nope, she's coming now. So then you ran back in and I pulled my pants down in the parking lot. And I go, Zach, do you see her head? And he did see her head, but he didn't say anything. So he just looked over at Stephanie and was like, get out here.
Yeah. I didn't let her know that I was seeing her head. Mm-hmm. I just got ready and then waved you over. I'm like, this is happening.
Yeah. And I knew
right now.
I knew this feeling, like I knew the crowning feeling, kind of that ring of fire. And honestly, when you're doing an unmedicated birth, that's like a very welcome feeling because you're like, we're almost there. This is happening. And you kind of, when you're at that point, you're like, I don't know, maybe you decide to cut this out if it's too much for people, but no, you kind of feel like if I have to have like all these other contractions, I will die. Like I'm going to die from this. And when you feel like I'm probably going to die, you're probably within minutes or seconds of having that baby.
1,000% transition.
Yes, that transition, and it's quick, but you feel like there's no way I can live with any more contractions. So you bring out a bed, and I climbed on, and I was like, help me get my pant leg off. She took one shoe off, one pant leg. I got on my hands and knees, and that wasn't comfortable. And so I got up on my knees, and you said, hang on to the handrail, please. And I pushed once or twice, and she came out on the bed, and Stephanie was there to make sure she didn't fall or anything. And then he said, you can grab her and pick her up. And so I'm sure you guys have some things to add in there that.
Yeah, it was just us. People are always like, well, was somebody there? And it's just like, no, it was me, Kristi, and our doula. And like a security guard that just got on shift.
I think she was very young. She's like, I have never seen anything like that.
I think she was young. I mean, she was very helpful.
Very sweet.
More helpful than most, but it was, it was really cool just to be there. You know, Kristi was facing me as she pushed, you know, baby came out, and I mean, you basically caught her. Combination of you and Kristi caught her on the bed, and, you know, Parker was great. She wide-eyed, cried right away.
Crying right away.
Breath, full lungs of fresh air.
She was
and then we walked in.
Beautiful color. And you guys were so smart. You had towels in the car. And so we were able to put a towel over her right away. Hey guys, it's Stephanie Sinclair, founder and owner of How to Mom. I'm just interrupting today's episode to make sure you are well aware of all that How to Mom offers. We, of course, are a community and a support group for all moms at all stages of life, but we also offer a large variety of services that I wanted to make sure you are well aware of. We offer birth doula services, both in person or online support. We have birth support groups with different birth packages to choose from. We also provide placenta encapsulation services, lactation services from our lactation counselors. We also offer postpartum services, birth planning assistance, belly casting. We have a registered dietitian, nutritionist. We also offer a variety of photography services from birth, newborn, and family packages. We truly have it all here at How to Mom. So please don't hesitate to reach out today to have a free consult and help us find the best way to support you in your pregnancy, birth, and postpartum journey. Now back to today's episode.
Yeah, that was one thing. Kristi did a good job at reminding us, was like, okay, let's keep some fresh towels just in case.
It was very smart.
Good thing we did. When we walked into the hospital with our baby. She was no named yet at that time, and
they pushed me in.
We pushed her in, holding her. We have you know the photo, but we have a good photo of Kristi holding Parker going up the elevator. And it's beautiful, you know. It's just like this is kind of how it's designed to be, you know. Nobody really needs to be there. It's just a very badass moment.
It was pretty badass.
You know, I'm just like, how do you not feel like the most badass woman like ever? Like, that's crazy. So
and she had so much humor after.
Oh yeah.
I was like, oh my God. Now I don't have to go to triage and get tests. Like, I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm done. Like, this is the best thing ever.
So she's like, did we get a discount?
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure,
like one of the first things she said.
You're the one who said, can you take a picture? And I'm usually really good at that. But in that moment, I wasn't thinking about that. And I was like, I'm so glad she said that, because that is the best picture ever.
I had said, Zach, take a picture of this.
You take a video.
A picture and then a video, which was good because I feel like when you tell the story, people are like, oh my gosh. But then when they see the picture, they're like, oh my gosh.
You're telling the truth.
Yeah. So we got up on the elevator and we're walking through the hospital, and it's funny because there's nurses and, you know, other people getting off work, I'm sure, that are walking past, and they're like, oh, congrats, you know, and like, thanks. And, you know, we get around the corner and, you know, our midwife is walking out of the room, and she's got her gloves on. She's like, where were you guys?
We were waiting for you.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. And then from that moment, you know, just got her checked. You know, everything else that with Poppy, you know, placenta was probably a bigger trauma with Poppy.
Absolutely.
With Parker, it was a breeze.
It was right there. You could just push, and then came out, and then it was good.
Yeah.
You were like, hallelujah.
Yeah.
And then I said to the midwife, well, I guess next time we should leave a little bit sooner. And she goes, next time you should just have a home birth. And I was like,
yeah,
truth.
I think you should just have your next one at home. And what's interesting is we talk a lot about how whether we're, at a home birth or a birth center or a hospital, it's like the whole world stops, right? And all that matters is kind of what's happening in that room. And this might not be your perspective as the birthing mom, but what was really kind of incredible is even though we were outside, there was a lot of things happening around us. I don't remember anything else but the three of us.
Yeah.
4 of us.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. I remember like looking into the emergency room window and seeing that there were people sitting in waiting chairs, but their backs were to us and they had no idea. Like they weren't even like turned around, like what's happening out there.
Yeah.
I felt like no one was even around.
It was just still. And I want to add just a couple quick things. So when we were still at home, what I thought was really helpful and really beautiful is before Zach did the adjustment and you guys went and took that nap, right? It's like about not necessarily getting into a deep sleep, but just resting your body. Your body's doing so much work. Let's get a little bit of rest. And the other great thing too, that I want a lot of people to know that something that is so powerful is that oxytocin. So just giving you two, like a moment to just be together and kind of be in the moment of what was happening and be present with this labor and this new baby, that too can do wonders for a labor and getting it to progress. We also did some sideline release because we knew that we needed baby to descend a little bit more, right? Not only like in my doula brain, but also both. I mean, for sure in Zach's, but for both of you, you knew that we needed to try and help Parker get a little bit lower so that we could get going with this labor and watch it progress. And so I just think it was just this combination of you two connecting, having some quiet, doing the exercises, of course, for sure, the adjustment. And then you just trusting us and knowing like Zach and I are going to get you to the hospital. I did say at one point, if you need to go around traffic, like go on the side, like I will just follow. But it just never felt chaotic. We trusted your body. I knew it knew exactly what to do. I knew we were safe. And also just obviously as a doula and of course, Zach as a doctor, like knowing certain protocols, right? Of like, who did we need to call in a moment if we had to? My perspective from when we got to the hospital is I knew you were going to be having this baby soon. And so my first request to security, I said, send the team down. Like she's going to deliver. So let's get the team down to us. And I don't think he believed me.
Didn't he tell you, well, tell her not to push?
Yeah.
Yeah, I said, I have a client and she is pushy. And he said, well, tell her not to push. And I was like, okay, I'm no longer talking to you.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, and then I was so funny when I brought the wheelchair, you were like, yep, nope, that's not happening. I was like, okay. So I run back in and I'm like, I need a bed. And the security guard just pointed to the bed. And that's when that sweet young security guard was like,
Yeah.
okay, let's like help them. And she just came out and just kind of witnessed. And she was like, that was really beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And we asked for if they had the footage, but they said that's the one spot that they don't have cameras pointing. I'm like, dang it.
Doesn't make sense to me and is such a bummer. But now you all can hear why this was such a beautiful mama-led, baby-led birth story with trust and security and a ton of work on both of yours behalf of preparing for this birth. But also just a really epic experience that I'm so glad that you guys were willing to share. I think there's so many takeaways for families listening to the story right now, that it's going to touch so many and just really help them trust. And it's really going to help them, just normalize childbirth.
Yep.
Yeah. And it was like so nice too, because like talking about it afterwards, like everybody had their place that like in their thoughts of like how to keep everybody safe. Like you thought to lock the bed. That thought never crossed my mind, but like, why would it? And like Zach thought to grab the towels and Zach was thinking like, I need to catch this baby if Stephanie doesn't get here with the bed. And so we're all having these different thoughts that just helped it like connect perfectly. And as I never, like, if you would ask me 10 years ago if I would do an unmedicated birth, I never would have done it. And as you start to like learn more about the body and health, you're like, yeah, if you think about it, my body can grow a human. Like, you don't think it can get itself out. Like, you don't think it has its ways of like getting itself out. Now, yeah, it comes with pain. Or, you know, like, it's, I don't know how to, yeah, it's not easy.
Right.
But like, yeah, you just gotta trust. Like, if you can grow the human, your body can get the human out.
Yeah, it's the most natural thing. I mean, if you think about it, everybody's done it.
Absolutely.
You know, so yeah. And
yeah, you grew a human and an organ.
And an organ.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of things that we just need to kind of stand by and make women feel safe and educated and empowered, and that mind emotional work is so important. And I just think sometimes that gets overlooked. And I don't think I really need to go in more detail after sharing this birth as to why chiropractic care is so important. I think this story speaks for itself in that sense. But I do want to say just the work that Dr. Zach does and other chiropractors around the Twin Cities, there's a reason why birth professionals and midwives and doulas, lactation specialists, there's a reason why we educate and point people in that direction. Body mechanics is a huge part of not only comfort through pregnancy, but aiding in the labor and delivery process. And so I think it was so cool for me to witness as obviously husband and wife, but just to see that side of it firsthand right there in the birth journey. I also think something that, Zach, that you said earlier is really important, regardless of our profession. Zach and Kristi both knew that they wanted Zach to be present as a dad, right? First and foremost, and as a husband, and support Kristi emotionally and not wear that medical hat. And so I think that's really beautiful, and it speaks volumes. And it's same when I had my babies. They're like, "Oh, did you have a doula?" It's like, yeah, of course. I'm not going to doula myself through labor where I'm vulnerable. And so I just think it's really it's incredible that we can take those moments and really dig deep as to our whys, but also like, who do we want to be in those moments, and who can we surround ourselves so that we're able to do just that. So it has been so incredible, you guys, to not only get to know you through this process, but to support you, and then of course for you to be willing to share your story. Do you guys have any last minute tips or last minute comments that you want our listeners to hear after, hearing such a crazy cool story?
I tell like all my pregnant friends this too, that even if you're not going unmedicated, a doula is like an amazing thing, because they're there for your support. Like the hospital is there to make sure that baby is safe, and your husband's there to support you, but your doula has been to birth, and so they've seen it before, especially if it's your first one. You don't know if this is normal. And so if they say, we need to go for a C-section right now, and then you feel panicked and like, oh my gosh, whereas a doula might be like, I've seen this before, maybe we can wait for 30 minutes, or questions to ask that families wouldn't know. And you're really there to be the laboring family's advocate. You don't work for the hospital. You of course you want the baby's health and safety is your first priority, but it's just like, and I would recommend to anybody, no matter what kind of birth you're having, to have a doula.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And just the trust, it always goes back to the trust is, to add on to what she said, having a doula, having those conversations before you get in high pressured situations where they're saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, but really slowing down and thinking about your values, right? What's important. And, I see a lot of pre and post, prenatal and postpartum moms, and same advice I give them is like, you know what you're doing. Like listen to your instincts, listen to your gut, because that's like a superpower that moms have that nobody else does is like knowing what's right and what's right for them and what's right for their families.
Yes.
And Kristi did that. And that was kind of the whole birth story too. You know, she just kind of took control of that and just listened to what she thought was best.
Yes. I love that. It was given to us for a reason. Zach, do you want to end just with letting our listeners know if they are interested in chiropractic care, kind of where they could find you? And I will also list it in our notes as well below, but just to let them know where they can find support and treatment.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So I own Midwest Chiropractic and Wellness, which is in Eden Prairie, Minnesota. You can visit our website, is just midwestchiroandwellness.com. You can follow us on social media, midwest.chiro. Otherwise, you can just reach out. You know, I always like having conversations with people if they just have questions or if they need a referral of a chiropractor closer to them, or just questions, because people don't know, right?
So true.
People don't know that, like, oh, you can adjust a pregnant person, or you can adjust a child, or you can, you know, anything. So there's a lot of unknowns that I love being just a resource for people just to ask questions. You know, low pressure, but just helping people get educated on, you know, what works for them.
Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. I will link all that below. And if I could opt in my children when Kristi goes back to work, that would be great. But I'm not sharing any of that information. So I just want to thank our listeners. Thanks to our guests for sharing their story. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. All right, you guys, that is it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. If so, please subscribe to our podcast, comment, share, give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to listen, and we will see you next time.